What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Swag Magician Music. It's your boy Swag Magician, and today I have my special guest, Rick Ross. I'm going to be bringing you guys my anticipated, much talked about new series, Weekly Roundup. Basically, what I'm going to be doing in this series, I'm going to go over the past week, both in music and movies, for what I've saw and heard, and also just give you guys a little insight into my own personal life in the last week, as well as in regards to the channel and what I'm doing with the channel. Again, guys, please just remember that this is very early. I'm still trying to build up every series and build this channel so where it's as good as it can be. So if you have any ideas, just go ahead and leave them down in the comments box. All feedback is appreciated, and just remember this is a growing process and we're going together. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to start off, just talk a little bit about my week. I don't want to get too personal with this channel, but I think you guys would probably enjoy just to hear a little bit about what I'm doing, as well as what I'm doing with the channel. Obviously, with the channel, I'm bringing this series. I hope to continue my CD collection on a bi-weekly basis. There's a couple of albums that I'm floating around reviewing, but I don't think I'm going to get to them. In case I haven't said this directly enough before, this channel isn't going to just review every album that's trendy. It's pretty much any music or a movie that really inspires me to talk about, that really just gives me a really strong opinion, then I will review it. Otherwise, if it's just an album that I kind of don't feel really emotional about, I'm not going to really bother. It has to be something that I'm really passionate, either positively or negatively, talking about. Also, I have a couple of ideas for a new series that I'm floating around, but they're pretty underdeveloped. So if you guys have any ideas for what I could do in regards to new series and new stuff on the channel, go ahead and let me know, because it's really kind of hard to really find something that's different from a lot of what other music channels do without actually creating my own music. In regards to my own personal life, this doesn't really affect you guys too much on the channel because I don't do this channel too intensively, but I'm going to be getting a part-time job soon and getting a little bit of cash flow. Hopefully that leads to improved equipment maybe for this channel. It'll allow me to listen to more music and maybe even, start other things. I'm not sure, but it's just good to have money in your pocket. I don't really have any at the moment, so that's going to be good. Other than that, I don't really have much going on. It's summertime. I'm just kind of enjoying it, just relaxing, playing some video games, watching some movies, listening to some albums, just doing what I normally do. So let's talk about this past week in music for me. I haven't listened to as many albums as I would have liked to. I have a lot of albums I still want to get around to, but there's a couple albums that I feel I want to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about the best album that I've heard that's come out in the last week or so. And that has to be Vince Staples' Summertime '06. I'm not going to talk too much about this. I was thinking about reviewing it, but I just didn't really want to build that much of an opinion to put onto a platform. But this album definitely inspires me with a lot of feelings. You get a lot of personality with Vince Staples' music, and he's kind of like, he's a gangster rapper, but it's kind of at a different perspective. A lot of gangster rappers in history have talked about their endeavors almost in a prideful way, whether it was Jay-Z's drug dealing. He was talking about how this is out of necessity, but he's also talking about like he likes being the man. Also with DMX, that early kind of gangster rap, they didn't really talk about it as like this is a product of their environment that they don't even want to be in, the way that Vince Staples does. He really describes living in Long Beach, California, and doing what he's had done in a different light than what we've seen. Most similarly, I would say this is kind of like Vince Staples' Good Kid, Mad City, but Vince Staples and Kendrick Lamar are not the same dude. Vince Staples is a lot more unapologetic about the life that he's had to live and just believes that's the way it is, and kind of discusses why it is, where Kendrick Lamar is showing how it's wrong, especially on Good Kid, Mad City. They're definitely different rappers, but they kind of come from a similar background, and so I think when you look at this album and you kind of look at that perspective, it creates a really interesting experience from Vince Staples, because again, it's something that at least in the way that he's talking about this culture that he's grown up in, is kind of different than a lot of rappers that we've heard put out gangster rap albums. Also, Vince Staples is just one of my favorite lyricists right now doing it. I first heard of the guy when he did the couple of features on Doris, and ever since then I've pretty much listened to every project that he's put out, whether it was Shine Cold Chain 2, which I thought was a really good cohesive mixtape, or if it was Hell Can Wait, which was kind of a really brooding and centered kind of banger album, I guess. It was really kind of just gritty and just kind of punchy. And then this album, again, he kind of creates more of an overall message with the music, and he also improves the production. No ID comes on this album and really just like handles the majority of it and puts out some really amazing, minimalist yet brooding bass-heavy beats that really just are awesome to listen to. Again, I don't want to go too much into this, but I think if you're a fan of hip-hop and if you're a fan of kind of like listening to topical hip-hop, because this is definitely something that isn't just, gangster rap bang your head to. There's a lot of thematic messages in here. You should definitely give this a listen to. An album that I didn't really enjoy as much, Breaking Benjamin's Dark Before Dawn. I talked a little bit about Breaking Benjamin in my last CD collection episode. If you didn't see that, link is in the description. But this is their comeback album, and as comeback albums can often go, this one just really falls flat. I talked about how Breaking Benjamin was subject to every once in a while putting out songs where they were just kind of like lackluster and didn't really hit you in any specific way. And then other times they put out songs that were appeasing to listen to, that weren't necessarily super in-depth musical, I guess, genius work, but it's just like they can create a sound at times that is catchy and melodic and just enjoyable to listen to. I feel like with this album they do a lot more of the former than they do the latter. This album just creates a lot of really generic kind of like soft hard rock that just kind of like, it's completely unmemorable. I don't remember really a single track from this LP other than one or two that kind of had a catchy chorus, I guess. For the majority of this album, they're just putting together music that lacks lyrical content, lacks really direction and forward-pushing motive, and just kind of like is a return to old for Breaking Benjamin, is putting out stuff that they know is safe and they know that they can make without, really having to push themselves. So yeah, Breaking Benjamin's Dark Before Dawn was really disappointing. I don't want to rant too much about it, but that was probably the worst album I've listened to this week. Again, I haven't listened to too many albums, and it wasn't that album was super bad. It was just so ridiculously boring and generic that I couldn't sit through it more than once. Let's talk about movies a little bit. I don't really watch too many movies. I watched a lot more last year. Sorry if I just hit the mic. I watched a lot more last year, and I wanted to watch a lot more this year. I'm just having the trouble to set aside the time to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie every day. But a good movie that I saw this last week, surprisingly, was Inside Out from Pixar. I don't know why it's surprising. Pixar doesn't really disappoint for me too often. But I don't know, when I just saw the trailer for this movie, I didn't really expect it to be all that interesting, and I thought that what they did, it really surprised me. Wow, the concept, it's a cool concept, but it isn't one that I haven't seen before about having like personifying someone's emotions. Really the kind of story that they were talking about with the little girl, and kind of the adventure that the emotions had to go through and how that related to the Riley's story in the movie. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was one of the most important messages Pixar's had in their series. It's one that really for Pixar is kind of risky, I guess. They're kind of like really making a statement about like dealing with like coming to a new area and just kind of growing up, and kind of how like dealing with that, where compared to other movies, while they've had adult messages, I think this is one that like really trying to fit into a new setting. This is the one that I think is the most developed and the most adult mature message that they've put in a movie. Also, the art style is pretty cool. I kind of like the way that the emotions are kind of like at times with the Joy, the main character. She's really bubbly, and she's kind of written like an elf almost, or a pixie or something. Where and then Anger is just kind of, he looks like a Super Meat Boy. I think that was really cool. I like I like the direction of this movie, I guess. And then a movie that I didn't enjoy so much this week that I saw in theaters was Jurassic World. I'm not the biggest Jurassic series fan, I guess. I watched the first one. I didn't really bother the next two. I didn't really like the first one too much. I kind of, obviously dinos are cool, and seeing dinosaurs rip shit up and just kind of walk around with humans. Okay, that's cool, but you can't really fuck that up, especially when you're Jurassic World and you have a multi-$100 million budget. Oh, fuck Teddy. Teddy just scared the shit out of me. Fuck Teddy. Allah Akbar! Allah! Jesus Christ, Rick Ross. However, if you take away and you don't look at a handful, if that, of nicely directed action sequences, you look at the majority, the meat of the movie, there's a forced relationship. There's a lot of awful dialogue. There's really predictable storyline and narration and direction, I suppose, especially with the last scene. It's just some of the most ridiculous, gimmicky shit that I've seen. And it's not that it's offensively bad. It's just it's so ridiculously predictable and just kind of like elementary in a sense, the way that it's ran. Like, oh, we're gonna surprise everybody with bringing this thing out, but it's not really a surprise. But I don't know. Again, I just feel like a lot of people like get enamored because you get to see like these dinosaurs and they're biting shit and they're doing cool things. But I feel like even when looking at that, there's a couple of set pieces that didn't really work well. There was one where some birds attack a main city. I hope this probably really isn't a spoiler, but and I didn't really think that was shot very well. It was kind of shaky and chaotic, and it didn't really get to show the full the full catastrophe of the nature. Kind of, you saw a couple of people die, or I guess get hit. But other than that, like, this is probably hundreds and hundreds of killer, like, dinosaur birds attacking civilization, and it just didn't really feel that severe. Also, with the main antagonist, they really, they built the movie up, and while he's really special because he has multiple genetic characteristics that allow him to do special things. For instance, there's one scene where he blends into the environment, and I thought that was really cool when I first saw this, but you don't see this as we go into late into the movie and we get more into the final, I guess, boss scene or whatever. I just feel like there's so much more room for improvement with this movie, I guess, and if they, I don't know who wrote the fucking dialogue, but it was awful. Again, the forced relationship between Chris Pratt and the female character, I didn't give a shit. Nobody gave a shit. There was a couple of plot holes. I feel like CinemaSins would have a real good fun time with this fucking movie, but, you know, it wasn't that it was offensively bad, it's just it was super boring. It was just generic as fuck. Like, really, again, take away the dinos, and you're just gonna be like, alright, well, somebody had a middle school project and went to town. So, next, I'd like to wrap up every episode in the series with talking about hopefully a user-submitted question, whether it be about music, movies, or just general thematic life questions, whatever it may be. So if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section, and I will get to them in future episodes. But for the day, since it's the first episode, I'm going to talk about my own question that I thought would be interesting and is actually relevant. I want to talk about what I think about comeback albums. Given that Breaking Benjamin just had their comeback album, I talked about Dark Before Dawn a little bit earlier. Disturbed just started making their comeback album. That's going to be coming out in August. Refused to put out a comeback album this last week. I thought I would talk about kind of the nature of comeback albums and how they usually don't really end up too well. There's a couple of reasons why this could be. For one is when you take an extended period off of time, the musical landscape changes from where it was when you were making music and when you were at your heyday. We see this with a band like Refused, where at the time when they put out that style of music, it was really influential. Nobody else was really doing what Refused was doing. But now, when they put out the music that they did, 20 or so or 15 or so years later, you kind of there's a line that you have to cross, whether you want to put out music that you know will appeal to fans that like that early stuff, or if you want to push music and hopefully like for the fans that want to see you progress as musicians. And a lot of times it's a lose-lose, because again, you're going to either put out something that you're trying to build and people aren't going to like it because they just want to hear you be more traditional, or you're going to be too traditional and people are going to ram you for not being too experimental and being too forward progressing. However, the other thing is, too, it's not only about the artists, it's about the listeners. When listeners hear bands take years off, they also change in their taste from where they were when they listened to a band or a group back then. For me, obviously, Disturbed, I talked about this last time, but they had a special place in my heart because I wasn't really too much into other music, and I really look at it analytically like I do now, and I didn't really listen to it as much. So for them to kind of grab me in and hook me in as my first escapade into like intensive music listening and intensive my musical journey is what I talked about before, that holds a special place in my heart. But going forward now, I'm in a different place. Obviously, I listen to a lot more music. I have a lot more experience with genres as a whole and this specific genre. Maybe I'm not going to like their music as much because I'm going to be able to compare it to some other stuff that I think is being more progressive and I think more enjoyable. And so I think the problem is really with comeback albums, I think like there's just not enough continued progression. The thing is, when you take that many years off and you skip either from one style of music to another, or you just remain the same, you can't do that. I think the best way that you progress your music is you slowly progress it over time, and each album kind of building on itself. I think by doing that, you not only familiar yourself within the genre and kind of create your own niche, but you also familiar yourself with your listeners, and they progressively build with you, I guess, and an emotional standpoint connect to you that way because they're going through that progression and can relate to that finalized album more, rather than if you just skip there and they're kind of not there in the process of where you were creatively building that album. So, I mean, as a whole, do I think people should still do comeback albums? I don't know. I mean, it's cool, you're right. Like your favorite band doesn't make a record in 10 or so years, and all of a sudden they're back, and you're like, yeah, I love these guys when I was a kid. That sentiment's cool, obviously, but then you turn on the album, you're like, man, I love these guys when I was a kid. You know what I mean? So I think the concept, I guess, is cool, but really, realistically, I don't have really a lot of experience where a comeback album I really enjoyed. You know, I mean, you can enjoy every here and there, but I don't think there's an experience where I haven't felt a little bit let down in regards to an artist that I really enjoyed. But that's just my opinion. If you guys have any opinions about comeback albums or maybe anything else that I've talked about today, go ahead and leave that down in the comment box. That's going to be it for episode 1 of my weekly roundup. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, any feedback is appreciated, so go ahead and leave that as well. I will definitely look at it and probably respond. Also, remember, this is a growing process and I'm new at this. I'm just trying to, learn how to do this better, both on the editing side and the recording side. There's a lot of stuff I can improve and I'm just learning, so just bear with me. What the fuck, Teddy? So, as always, you guys, it was your boy Swag Magician, aka The Rising Gamer, aka The Real Slim Spaghetti. Stay cool, keep fresh. We out. Peace.